Hey y'all, so this one's gonna be quick. I just wanted to share really quickly some of my thoughts about the absence of the On the Move podcast from Tiffany A. Henyard. I took down some notes so that I would be as clear as concise this morning because I haven't had my coffee or my sativa yet. So I just want to give this to you real quick so you won't be sitting around waiting for something that's not going to happen. Now, everybody says we're a little weird and we're a little nuts because we treat people according to their sun signs and their moon signs and their ascending signs. But I'm telling you, this bitch is playing Gemini games. If you know anything about a Gemini, you know they want more than anything in the world than power and attention. They're all about energy. Gemini is an air sign. Air is all about energy. Air don't need nothing but something to bump up against. You don't even know the wind is blowing if you don't see a tree move, right? And nobody cares unless there's something that affects them from the air. So Geminis will always do what it takes to get your attention and hold it. And maybe nothing else after that. I call Geminis the window shoppers of the zodiac because they very rarely start and finish anything. They make loud announcements and very rarely produce a whole lot. So anyway, let's talk about this. So I wanted to just share with you a couple of my thoughts about the absence of the On the Move podcast. I waited for it. I watched out for it. I checked Spotify. I checked YouTube. But you know what I also checked? I checked Tiffany Henyard's subscriber count. And I noticed it didn't grow very much. So when I saw that her YouTube subscribers went from like 68 to like just over 100 or something like that, I knew the podcast wasn't coming. And when I saw that there were only about 554 people of the 7 billion people on the planet waiting for this podcast, I knew it wasn't going to happen because she wasn't getting enough energy. She wasn't gaining enough attention. Her PR firm, I believe, I forget the name of it now, so I'm not going to say it wrong. I believe it's the Whitley Group, but I might be wrong. They were paid by the city of Dalton, I'm sure, to put all those announcements on the newswire to make sure that her podcast was promoted throughout the news sphere, to make it look credible. Still nobody cared. They knew that people like me and Hannibal is Hungry and Anton Daniels and all the other folks working on this would tell y'all what y'all needed to know. Y'all knew y'all didn't need to subscribe to that janky ass podcast. A few of us would subscribe and then break it down and bring it to you. So you didn't have to sit through the bad grammar and the bad voice and everything else that comes with Tiffany Henyard that makes us play her in 2-speed. In double time. But yeah, so last night, the podcast was supposed to come out yesterday. But if you remember, it was also announced to come out sometime in February. So between March 8th and sometime in February was almost a month, and it didn't happen, and there was no word about it. Now, like I said before, these are the games that Geminis play. So I want you to notice, first off, the name of the podcast. And I want you to tell me anywhere on this screen if you see the word mayor. I'll wait. Time's up. On the Move podcast, Tiffany A. Henyard. Even in her announcement of the podcast, she never mentions mayor. This is not about her political, although she calls this an entertaining political podcast. Tiffany Henyard was trying to carve out her own self as an individual celebrity, just in case something happens and she loses her political opportunities. She was trying to test the market to see if there would be a place for her outside of politics, like Shannon Sharpe found a successful place outside of sports, and everybody else who's been successful outside of their original arena has been able to step over into the podcast world and be successful, but they also are people who have formal education, which I still haven't been able to prove that Tiffany or Tangenique went to Robert Morris College. I haven't been able to produce the receipts that they actually finished their matriculation of their bachelor's degrees, which does make a difference in the way a person talks, in the way they work on projects, in the way they work in teams, in the way they lead, in the way they present themselves. We go to college for a reason. Our parents and our communities sent us to higher education for a reason. And there's a reason only 5% of Americans to this day still have a college degree. Because it ain't easy. And it does produce quite a bit. You can tell a person usually who finished at least a bachelor's degree over a person who probably broke in cars instead. So, excuse me. Take notice that there is nowhere on this screen and nowhere from Tiffany Henyard that this is about Mayor Tiffany Henyard. This is her own personal celebratory podcast. This is to celebrate her. This is to make her a celebrity. This is to promote her. I've said that from the beginning. And since nobody's interested in her, because she said, do you have questions about this, that, this or that, or just about me, Tiffany A. Henyard? Well, I can only imagine the questions she got. I asked a very simple question, a very respectful question that I don't expect to get an answer to because I haven't gotten it from anybody, even the people that endorsed her. What is her track record of leadership? Or I'm sorry, let me say it right. Her successful track record of leadership and project management and teamwork in a fucking organization. What's her track record? Okay, because the last mayor made her the head of the housing committee and she had 4 meetings in 4 years. So what's her track record? I hear a lot of the people who endorsed her, which I highly respect, but I do think lacked some political education, at least at the time of endorsing her. I've heard them say, oh, we would cover her faults. That's not how we elect officials into office. This is not a training position. Being a mayor is not like being an assistant manager where you can come in knowing nothing and learn what you need to learn along the way. No, that is usually what turns into integrity. Most people who get jobs they don't deserve end up acting out of integrity, outside of integrity, because they don't have the fortwit to actually carry the role. So they don't do what they're supposed to do. So that was the question I had. What's the bitch's track record? I still haven't found that out yet. But I don't think she ever had any plans to talk about real political details. The receipts were never going to be official. They were going to be something just like they produced documents finally to give to the judge and then told everybody they won a case. That's not winning a case. That's satisfying a judgment. That's satisfying the requirements of a case. You showed the judge documents that you were supposed to show the legislative body of the city council months ago. So no, you didn't win. You just got out of the case. But I think that Keith was going to be forging most of the documents. Now, let me just go over some of the things that we already know, okay? We already know that this was all about gaining subscribers. That's why in order to get answers to these questions that a FOIA is supposed to satisfy, all you need is a Freedom of Information Act request, which isn't being answered by Keith Freeman or anybody else. But instead of doing the legal thing and responding to the FOIAs and the questions in a board meeting, you tell trustees and citizens and onlookers, if you want official answers from me from an official capacity, you need to subscribe to my podcast. And nobody did, honey. Nobody did, honey. Nobody. I mean, very rarely, very hardly. In comparison to the people that are covering this and how channels have grown from the coverage of this scallywag. Nobody cares. Nobody goes to her. You go look at, I'm gonna encourage you to go look at her YouTube, go look at her Twitter, go look at her, or X, go look at her Facebook, go look at her Spotify and Amazon, and just look at the numbers. Nobody likes her. That's why she got less votes than all of her fellow trustees when she ran for mayor. So we realized that this was just a ploy to gain subscribers and attention, and it actually teetered on illegal. Because if FOIA requests are being sent out and people are asking you questions in a legal forum through a legal instrument called a Freedom of Information Act request, but then you come on a video and say, if you want to know about those things, subscribe to my podcast. Baby, that's not legal, honey. And you'll find out. I don't know if you know how to read the laws, but you'll definitely find out. None of her social media channels have grown. Not tremendously since she announced this podcast. And that's exactly what she was hoping for. All she wanted to do was make some friends along the way. That's why she has the parties. That's why she has the giveaways, quote unquote. That's why she has the podcast. That's why she overpays people, because nobody really likes her. And it's all about making friends along the way. Well, obviously making voters. Some people will pull you into their circle just to abuse you. And that's what she wants to do. Now, let's talk about what we already know. We already know that Keith Freeman forges documents, okay? So we couldn't trust any receipts that she brings in front of us anyway. We've already seen some receipts, and the receipts that we've seen have said that she uses her department heads and their budgets to make orders for herself, like Christmas lights, like banners with her name on them, like coating for the ice skating rink. Those are purchases that she should be petitioning the board for herself. But what she's done is what I just counted out to be almost $1 million in services and products. She's had the department heads make the orders for through their budgets. Wonder why the board is not allowing the department heads to raise their budgets anymore by millions of dollars? Because they figured that out. When those vendors started reaching out to the department, to the trustees, they realized that Tiffany Henyard, as she wants to call herself in this picture, she's not calling herself mayor, so I won't call her the bitch mayor. My nice side wanted to say her. My other side said the bitch. So it came out, her the bitch. She don't call herself Tiffany, Mayor Tiffany Henyard here. I won't. I've been giving her that respect, but it don't look like she want it. Not by the looks of this picture. Okay? And the red bottoms are too big. And they never are. So anyway, she knew good and goddamn well that we were going to sift through those documents with a fine-tooth comb. I've gotten documents from certain... there are certain area codes in America that they're just not honest. If you do business with certain areas of America, you already know you're going to have to look at that document real close, and not even look at it close. Baby, whatever you looking at it on, if it's a piece of paper, you got to look it through the light. If it's on a computer screen, you better flip that screen up so you can see it from a different angle. Man, I'm telling you, them documents were going to be so doctored up and so forged up like we don't know. Because game recognized game. Always. I say it all the time. Just because we don't live that way doesn't mean we couldn't. We understand there's no reward in thievery. So we choose not to operate in those ways. We choose to have what we deserve and live within our means. But there are those who've come across us, who've presented to us the ideas, the Pookies and the Ray Rays of the fake documents. So we know what they look like. And so does everybody else. We also have called out the fact that it makes no sense to show receipts on a podcast instead of an actual board meeting. Now, we already learned that there's a secret credit card and that she's still making purchases with it. That's the Amex that was given to the police chief. Now, we also already know that she's been paying for the Tahoe. Her Tahoe, I think 2 of them, instead of the public works vehicles and the police vehicles. Now, why Stacy and Lacey, isn't it interesting that their names rhyme and they both pussy? Why the two of them are mad at the board about announcing the cars are repoed? Why aren't they mad at their boss for not making sure the bill is paid? How does Tangenique's name stay out of everything? That's what I want to know. We also have already learned and know that she's been paying that Tahoe, and that Janice Johnson issued the check for the Tahoe. It had nothing to do with an ACH, whose name was on the account, and all of that. We know that the HR director has been issuing checks on behalf of the Village of Dolton. I still don't understand why. Because the standard operating procedure is that the finance director cuts the checks. So why is HR cutting checks? And that raises more questions than it actually answers. We also already know that trustee Jason House's computer was never seized by the FBI, and he's never been arrested. Y'all, she told that same lie twice, 1 year apart. I know. You may not know because you just heard it for the first time a few weeks ago. But it also came out in a meeting while Ed Steve was still a trustee. The same meeting where she said Ed Steve begged her to fix his roof. That same meeting, and almost in the same breath, she said Jason House's computer was lifted by the FBI. That was November 2022. See, the reason I don't lie is because I don't like to have to remember that shit. I don't like to have to keep track of what I said when I said it. The truth can be repeated very easily, even if it's not what people want to hear. So it's obvious to us that she's a pathological liar. She told the same lie on somebody twice, a year apart, and forgot. Stupid bitch. I can only imagine the relationship she has with her child, and I pray that her child is removed from that family. I'm going to be honest with you. Before she's 7 years old, so she doesn't have to take on those demons and then pay the karma for them. We also know that Tiffany Henyard has been stealing from the people. She's been going out telling vendors to do work that has not been authorized by the board, and then wondering why the vendors aren't getting paid. So what is there left for her to spin a tale about at this point? She should just spend these last few days with her daughter and keep her makeup done, just in case today is the day. Ain't nobody checking for this. What she don't realize is we already know. By 3 o'clock yesterday, I knew that podcast wasn't coming. Nobody was really, really that surprised. And what she wants us all to do now is talk about it. So that's what we're doing. Well, that's all I got. Ain't got no more. See y'all later.